Now let's take a closer look at reading data from a stream. Pay close attention to what I'm going to show you, because what you will learn in this lesson will be the foundation for handling input errors, which we'll talk about next. So in this lesson, we're going to write a program and ask the user to enter two numbers. Pretty basic. So let's print a message. Then we get the first number. Now let's repeat this and get the second number. So second, and one more time, we need to change this. Good. Finally, we're going to print a message and say you entered, let's say first and second. Okay. Now let's run the program. So if we enter 10 and 20, we get this message. Perfect. But what if we run the program and enter two numbers on the first line? What do you think is going to happen? Let's find out. All right, see what happened? So we could capture these values properly. However, our program didn't pause to capture the second number. It didn't behave properly. So why is this happening? Well, all these input streams, whether it's the standard input stream or an input stream for reading data from a file, all these streams have what we call a buffer. A buffer is a temporary storage in memory for reading values. So when we get to this line and read something from the user, what the user enters first goes into the buffer. So in this case, I entered 10 and 20. Okay. Now cin is going to read the value from the buffer. So it's going to start reading all these characters until it gets to white space. So it will extract 10, then convert it to a number and store it in the first variable. Now our buffer is going to look like this. So then we're going to print the second message. But when we get to this line, because the buffer is not empty, the program is not going to wait for the user to enter some value. It's going to go straight in the buffer, get the 20, and store it in the second. That is why our program didn't pause. But how can we solve this problem? Well, all these input streams have a method for clearing the buffer. That is called ignore. Now, ignore has two parameters, and they're both optional because they have a default value. The first parameter is of type stream size, which represents the number of characters to ignore. The second parameter is called DLM, which is short for delimiter, and that is the character we are looking for. So we can call this and say, hey, ignore the next 10 characters or until you find the \n, which represents a new line. That is when the user presses enter. But why did I use 10 here? Well, that is an arbitrary number. What if the user types so many more characters after the first value? So we cannot rely on 10 characters. So to properly clear all the remaining characters in the buffer, we should pass the largest value that we can represent using the stream size. That is the type of this parameter. So earlier we talked about the numeric limits class. We use this to find the largest value we can store in an integer. Now we can use this with stream size. So instead of relying on 10 characters, now we're going to pass the largest value that can be stored in stream size. Okay, so here's the end result. Now let's run the program and see what happens. So I'm going to enter 10 and 20. Good. Our program paused to capture the second value. So I'm going to enter 30. All right, now we see 10 and 30. Beautiful. But what if we run the program and instead of 10, we enter an invalid value like A? See what happened? Our program didn't pause. And now it thinks we entered 0 and this number. We'll talk about solving this in the next lesson.